The story of Craig Austin Lang begins far from the courtroom where he would eventually be sentenced to die behind bars. A former U.S. Army soldier, Lang once wore the uniform of a nation that trusted him with discipline, responsibility, and lethal training. Years later, that same training would become a dark undertone in one of the most disturbing criminal cases to emerge from Florida in the late 2010s. In 2018, a quiet stretch of highway became the scene of a brutal double murder and armed robbery that shocked investigators and devastated a family forever. What initially appeared to be a violent carjacking soon unraveled into a complex narrative involving deception, brutality, and a man who seemed to have crossed an irreversible moral line. This documentary explores how Craig Lang went from soldier to convicted murderer, the crime that sealed his fate, and the federal trial that ended with 2 consecutive life sentences. It is a story of violence, accountability, and the chilling consequences of choices made without regard for human life. Before his name was associated with headlines and court transcripts, Craig Austin Lang lived a life that outwardly resembled that of many young Americans seeking direction and purpose. He joined the U.S. Army, where he received combat-related training and was introduced to a structured environment built on obedience and hierarchy. Fellow soldiers later described him as intense and opinionated, someone who struggled to fit comfortably within authority while simultaneously craving it. His time in the military was not marked by the heroism often romanticized in popular culture, but rather by instability and disciplinary issues. Eventually, Lang's military career came to an end, leaving him adrift and disconnected from the structure that once defined his identity. This period of transition would prove critical. Instead of rebuilding his life, Lang gravitated toward increasingly dangerous paths, surrounding himself with weapons, extremist rhetoric, and a mindset shaped more by aggression than accountability. By 2018, he was no longer a soldier. He was a man spiraling toward violence. The events that led to the murders unfolded during what should have been an ordinary day for a Florida couple traveling together. They were not involved in crime, nor were they expecting danger. Their lives intersected with Craig Lang in the most tragic way imaginable. According to federal prosecutors, Lang and an accomplice targeted the couple for their vehicle, carrying out an armed robbery that escalated into cold-blooded murder. Evidence later presented in court painted a harrowing picture: gunfire, desperation, and a deliberate effort to eliminate witnesses. The couple never stood a chance. Their deaths were swift, violent, and senseless. What made the crime especially disturbing was not only its brutality, but the apparent lack of remorse shown afterward. The killings were not acts of panic or self-defense. They were intentional. This distinction would become central to the prosecution's case and ultimately to the sentence that followed. After the murders, investigators began piecing together a trail that quickly led back to Craig Lang. Forensic evidence, digital footprints, and witness accounts formed a cohesive narrative of guilt. Surveillance footage and communications data contradicted any claims of innocence. Prosecutors argued that Lang acted with calculated intent, using force to steal and killing to avoid consequences. The investigation also uncovered disturbing details about Lang's mindset, including his fascination with violence and his belief that he could evade law enforcement. These findings strengthened the case that this was not an impulsive crime, but a deliberate one. As authorities closed in, Lang fled the country, an action that further damaged any defense he might later attempt. Flight, prosecutors would argue, was consciousness of guilt. By the time he was apprehended and returned to face justice, the evidence against him was overwhelming, and the path toward a federal trial was already set. The decision to prosecute Craig Lang in federal court carried significant weight. Federal charges meant harsher sentencing guidelines and a focus on crimes that crossed state lines or involved specific aggravating factors, such as armed robbery resulting in death. Prosecutors charged Lang with multiple counts, including carjacking resulting in death and firearms offenses. These were not symbolic charges. They carried mandatory life sentences if proven. From the outset, the government made it clear that this case was about accountability at the highest level. The victims' families were promised a thorough pursuit of justice, and the court prepared for a trial that would examine not only the crime itself, but the character and conduct of the man accused of committing it. Media attention grew steadily, fueled by Lang's background as a former soldier and the sheer brutality of the offense. The courtroom would soon become the stage where every decision Lang had made would be scrutinized. During the trial, prosecutors meticulously reconstructed the events leading up to the murders. They presented timelines, ballistic evidence, and testimony that placed Lang at the center of the crime. Jurors heard how the victims were ambushed, how their vehicle was stolen, and how lethal force was used without hesitation. Each piece of evidence reinforced the prosecution's argument that Lang acted with intent and awareness. Defense attorneys attempted to cast doubt, suggesting alternative interpretations and questioning the reliability of certain witnesses. But the consistency of the evidence proved difficult to overcome. Perhaps most damning were Lang's own actions after the crime. His attempts to disappear, his communications, and his behavior while on the run. To the jury, these actions suggested not fear, but calculation. As days of testimony unfolded, the case against Craig Lang solidified into a portrait of guilt that was nearly impossible to refute. The jury's verdict came after careful deliberation, but the outcome reflected the strength of the prosecution's case. Craig Austin Lang was found guilty on all major counts related to the double murder and armed robbery. The courtroom was heavy with emotion as the verdict was read. For the victim's loved ones, it was a moment of validation mixed with grief, a confirmation of responsibility that could never undo the loss. For Lang, it marked the end of any hope for freedom. Yet the verdict was only one step. Sentencing would determine how the justice system would ultimately respond to the severity of his crimes. Federal sentencing hearings are often as consequential as trials themselves, and this one would be no exception. The question before the court was not whether Lang would face punishment, but how severe that punishment would be. At sentencing, prosecutors argued forcefully for the maximum penalty allowed under federal law. They emphasized the deliberate nature of the murders, the trauma inflicted on the victims' families, and Lang's complete disregard for human life. They also highlighted his background, noting that his military training gave him a heightened understanding of violence and its consequences. This, they argued, made his actions even more reprehensible. The defense sought leniency, pointing to Lang's troubled past and mental state, but these arguments carried little weight against the gravity of the crime. Victim impact statements were read aloud, filling the courtroom with raw emotion. Family members spoke of futures stolen and lives forever altered. Each statement underscored the irreversible damage caused by Lang's actions. By the time the judge prepared to speak, the atmosphere was somber, heavy with the knowledge that this decision would echo for generations. The judge's words were deliberate and unequivocal. In sentencing Craig Austin Lang to 2 consecutive life terms in federal prison, the court made clear that society would be permanently protected from him. Consecutive life sentences mean exactly what they imply: no possibility of release, no chance of parole, no second chapter. The judge cited the calculated brutality of the crime, the lack of remorse, and the need for justice that matched the severity of the offense. This sentence was not about vengeance, it was about accountability and public safety. For the victims' families, it offered a measure of closure, though no sentence could truly compensate for their loss. For Lang, it marked the final consequence of choices that began long before the trigger was pulled. The gavel fell, and with it, Craig Lang's future was sealed within the walls of the federal prison system. The sentencing sent a powerful message beyond the courtroom. It underscored that former military status does not grant immunity from justice, nor does it excuse criminal behavior. If anything, the court suggested, such a background carries an added responsibility. The case sparked broader conversations about how veterans reintegrate into civilian life, the dangers of untreated trauma, and the consequences of failing to address warning signs. Yet the court remained clear: explanations are not excuses. Many individuals struggle after military service, but the overwhelming majority do not commit violent crimes. Lang's actions were his own, and the sentence reflected that reality. As news of the verdict spread, reactions ranged from relief to renewed calls for better mental health support for veterans. Still, the central truth remained unchanged. 2 innocent lives were taken, and the person responsible would never walk free again. In the years following the sentencing, the case of Craig Lang continued to be cited as an example of federal prosecutors pursuing justice in cases involving extreme violence. Legal analysts noted the importance of strong evidence and the strategic decision to bring federal charges. The case also highlighted the role of cooperation between state and federal authorities in ensuring that serious crimes receive appropriate punishment. For the victims' families, the legal process had ended, but the emotional journey continued. Grief does not conclude with a verdict. It lingers in anniversaries, empty chairs, and unanswered questions. Still, many family members expressed gratitude that the system had worked as intended, delivering a sentence that acknowledged the full weight of their loss. In this way, the case became both a cautionary tale and a somber reminder of justice's limits. From a broader perspective, the story of Craig Lang forces uncomfortable reflection. How does someone trained to serve become capable of such cruelty? Experts caution against simplistic answers. Violence rarely emerges from a single cause. It is often the result of accumulated choices, influences, and failures, personal and systemic. Yet the justice system focuses on outcomes, not hypotheticals. In this case, the outcome was undeniable. 2 lives lost, a family shattered, and a perpetrator sentenced to spend the rest of his life behind bars. The court's decision reaffirmed a core principle of law, that no background, ideology, or personal struggle outweighs the value of human life. This principle guided the verdict and the sentence, anchoring the case in a moral clarity that resonated far beyond the courtroom. As time passes, the details of the crime may fade from public memory, but its lessons remain. The Lang case illustrates how quickly violence can erupt and how devastating its consequences can be. It also demonstrates the importance of vigilance, by communities, by institutions, and by individuals themselves. Warning signs often exist, but recognizing them requires awareness and action. While no intervention can guarantee prevention, understanding the pathways that lead to violence can help reduce its likelihood. In documenting this case, the goal is not to sensationalize tragedy, but to understand it. The victims deserve to be remembered not for how they died, but for the lives they lived. Their story, intertwined with Lang's in the most tragic way, serves as a reminder of what is lost when violence prevails. Craig Lang now lives within the rigid routines of federal incarceration, a stark contrast to the freedom he once had. Life sentences are not dramatic in the way television portrays them. They are marked by monotony, isolation, and the slow passage of time. There will be no appeals capable of restoring his freedom, no future milestones beyond prison walls. This reality stands as the final consequence of his actions. For society, his incarceration ensures safety. For the families affected, it offers a form of justice, though never true peace. The system has spoken, and its message is clear. Acts of extreme violence will be met with equally severe consequences. In this balance between crime and punishment, the law seeks not perfection, but fairness. Ultimately, this case is about more than one man's downfall. It is about accountability, the sanctity of life, and the role of justice in responding to unimaginable harm. The sentence handed down to Craig Austin Lang reflects the seriousness with which the federal system treats crimes of this magnitude. It also serves as a warning. Choices made in moments of violence can define an entire lifetime. As this documentary concludes, the focus returns to the victims, whose lives were taken without mercy. Their absence is the true tragedy at the heart of this story. Justice, in this case, came in the form of 2 life sentences. But remembrance, vigilance, and empathy are the responsibilities that remain with all of us. As the legal chapter closed, the broader public conversation around the case continued to evolve. News outlets revisited the facts, commentators analyzed the verdict, and true crime audiences sought to understand how such an act could occur in plain sight. What stood out to many observers was the sheer ordinariness of the setting where the crime took place. There was no hidden lair or dramatic standoff, just a roadside encounter that escalated into irreversible violence. This ordinariness made the crime more unsettling, reinforcing the idea that danger does not always announce itself. For investigators, the case reaffirmed the importance of rapid evidence preservation and interagency cooperation. For the public, it shattered assumptions about safety during everyday travel. Each retelling of the story carried the same haunting conclusion. 2 lives were lost in a matter of minutes, and those minutes reshaped countless others forever. The sentence ensured justice, but the shock of the crime lingered well beyond the courtroom. Victim advocacy groups closely followed the Lang case, citing it as an example of why strong sentencing laws exist. Armed robbery resulting in death is treated with particular severity under federal statutes because of its inherent disregard for human life. Advocates emphasize that such laws are not abstract policies. They exist to address real harm suffered by real people. In statements released after sentencing, several organizations expressed solidarity with the victims' families, acknowledging the courage it takes to endure a long trial and relive traumatic details. These groups also highlighted the importance of victim impact statements, which humanize legal proceedings that can otherwise feel clinical. In this case, those statements carried immense emotional weight. They reminded everyone present that behind every charge and statute citation were individuals whose lives were cut short. The law delivered punishment, but remembrance ensured that the victims remained central to the narrative. From a psychological standpoint, experts examined Lang's behavior both before and after the crime. His apparent confidence in evading capture, coupled with his decision to flee the country, suggested a belief that he was beyond accountability. This mindset, psychologists note, is often present in individuals who rationalize violence as a means to an end. In court, however, rationalizations crumble under evidence. The legal system does not evaluate beliefs, it evaluates actions. Lang's actions, documented in meticulous detail, left little room for interpretation. The jury was tasked not with understanding why he believed he could commit such acts, but with determining whether he did. Their verdict answered that question definitively. This distinction between explanation and responsibility became one of the case's most enduring lessons. Understanding behavior does not negate culpability. The role of federal jurisdiction also became a point of discussion after the trial. By bringing the case at the federal level, prosecutors ensured that sentencing would reflect the full gravity of the crime without the possibility of parole. Legal scholars noted that this approach is often reserved for cases involving extreme violence or broader public safety concerns. In Lang's case, the combination of armed robbery, double homicide, and interstate implications justified that decision. The resulting sentence reinforced the idea that federal courts serve as a backstop for justice when crimes reach a certain threshold of severity. For many observers, this aspect of the case underscored the layered nature of the U.S. justice system, state and federal authorities working in parallel to ensure accountability. The outcome demonstrated how those layers can converge in moments that demand decisive action. Inside the courtroom, the sentencing hearing marked the emotional climax of the case. The judge's remarks were not theatrical, but they were firm and unambiguous. Each sentence was carefully chosen, reflecting both legal precedent and moral judgment. When the words 2 consecutive life sentences were spoken, there was a noticeable stillness in the room. It was a moment that carried finality. For the victims' families, it confirmed that the man responsible would never again threaten another life outside prison walls. For Lang, it erased any remaining uncertainty about his future. The legal process had run its course, and the outcome was absolute. This moment illustrated the power of the judiciary, not as an instrument of emotion, but as an institution tasked with delivering proportionate consequences. In the aftermath, attention shifted to the long-term implications of the case. Federal life sentences mean permanent incarceration, often under strict conditions. Life in such facilities is regimented, repetitive, and isolating. There are no countdowns to release, no parole hearings to prepare for. Each day blends into the next, defined by routine rather than possibility. This reality serves as a stark counterpoint to the violence that brought Lang there. While the crime unfolded in moments of chaos, the punishment unfolds slowly, over decades. Criminologists often describe this contrast as intentional, swift violence answered by enduring consequence. It is within this framework that the justice system seeks deterrence, not through spectacle, but through certainty. The certainty in this case was unmistakable. Public reaction to the sentence revealed a complex mix of emotions. Many expressed relief, believing the punishment fit the crime. Others reflected on the broader social factors that can contribute to violent outcomes, including alienation and unresolved trauma. Yet even among those discussions, there was little disagreement about the verdict itself. The evidence was clear, the harm undeniable. This consensus highlighted an important aspect of justice. While society can debate causes and prevention, accountability remains non-negotiable. The Lang case became a reference point in discussions about violent crime, often cited to emphasize that explanations do not diminish responsibility. In this way, the case extended beyond its immediate facts, influencing how similar crimes are discussed and understood in the public sphere. For law enforcement, the case reinforced the importance of persistence. Complex investigations can span years, crossing jurisdictions and involving extensive coordination. In this instance, every recovered detail, every record, every testimony played a role in constructing an airtight case. Investigators later noted that the strength of the prosecution rested not on a single dramatic piece of evidence, but on the accumulation of consistent facts. This methodical approach left little room for doubt. It also demonstrated how modern investigations rely on both traditional detective work and digital forensics. Together, these tools ensured that the truth could be reconstructed with precision. The outcome validated those efforts, affirming that even the most calculated attempts to escape justice can fail when evidence speaks clearly. The victim's legacy remains an essential part of this story. Though public records often reduce individuals to names and indictments, those who knew them remember full lives, relationships, routines, dreams. Friends and family continue to honor their memory in private ways, marking anniversaries and sharing stories that keep them present. These acts of remembrance stand in quiet contrast to the violence that ended their lives. They assert that the victims are more than a footnote in a criminal case. In documentaries like this one, preserving that humanity is crucial. The focus is not solely on the perpetrator, but on the lives affected and the void left behind. Justice may close a case file, but memory ensures that the impact is not erased. As years pass, cases like Craig Lang's often recede from headlines, replaced by newer tragedies. Yet their influence persists within legal precedent and public consciousness. Each life sentence handed down reinforces a standard against which future cases are measured. Prosecutors study these outcomes, defense attorneys analyze them, and judges reference them. In this way, the Lang case becomes part of the legal fabric, informing decisions long after public attention fades. It serves as a reminder that justice is cumulative, built case by case, verdict by verdict. The law evolves through these moments, shaped by both principle and consequence. This enduring impact is one of the less visible, but most significant, results of such trials. From an ethical perspective, the case raises enduring questions about responsibility and choice. Lang's path was not predetermined. At numerous points, different decisions could have led elsewhere. The law does not punish thoughts or inclinations, it punishes actions. In this sense, the sentence reflects a clear boundary. Regardless of background or circumstance, certain acts carry irrevocable consequences. This boundary is essential to the concept of justice. Without it, accountability loses meaning. The clarity of the sentence reinforces that boundary, drawing a line that cannot be crossed without severe repercussion. It is a sobering reminder of how quickly choices can redefine an entire life. For viewers watching this story unfold, the impact often lies in its realism. There are no cinematic embellishments, no dramatic twists, only facts, evidence, and outcomes. This realism is what makes the story resonate. It reflects the true nature of violent crime, abrupt, devastating, and final. By presenting the case as it occurred, the documentary approach honors the seriousness of the subject matter. It avoids glorification, focusing instead on consequence. In doing so, it invites reflection rather than fascination. This tone is deliberate, designed to respect the victims while providing clarity about the justice process. It is a reminder that real-life crime carries real-life costs. The federal prison sentence ensures that Craig Lang will never again participate in society outside institutional walls. This permanence distinguishes life sentences from all other forms of punishment. There is no redemption arc, no return to normalcy. The punishment is not designed to rehabilitate, but to protect society and acknowledge irreparable harm. Courts reserve such sentences for crimes that permanently sever the offender's relationship with the public. In this case, the court determined that threshold had been crossed. The sentence stands as the system's final response, a statement that certain actions forfeit the right to freedom. As this story reaches its conclusion, the emphasis returns to accountability. Justice is not about erasing tragedy, but about responding to it with clarity and resolve. The Lang case demonstrates how the justice system confronts extreme violence, not with emotion, but with evidence and law. It shows how courts weigh facts, listen to victims, and impose consequences proportionate to harm. This process, though imperfect, is foundational to societal trust. When it functions as intended, it provides structure in the aftermath of chaos. The sentence delivered in this case reflects that function in its most uncompromising form. Craig Austin Lang's story ends not with ambiguity, but with certainty. 2 lives were taken, and the person responsible was held fully accountable under federal law. The sentence, 2 consecutive life terms, ensures that the harm he caused will not be repeated. For the victims' families, it represents justice achieved, even as grief remains. For society, it stands as a warning about the irreversible consequences of violence. And for history, it records a case where evidence, law, and accountability converged. This is not merely a story about crime. It is a testament to the enduring importance of justice when faced with the unimaginable.